You know, they say there's an old saying in America that you can't fight City Hall. And if you just happen to sum up enough courage to fight and get up off your soapbox just to preaching sanctimonious platitudes about some day in the upper yonder and stroll into a courthouse in the Old Dominion state, a judge is sure as fiery, ignominious, and eternal hell gonna set you straight and tell you that sovereign immunity is alive and well in Virginia. And maybe that's why, even with the mustard seed of faith, only maybe a handful of folks who will swear on everything that is holy that they had found Jesus and on fire ever brought a case to court when the old devil virus had closed their church in COVID-19 pandemic. But you know, one old preacher's kid did. And you know, ain't nothing worse than a preacher's kids. And even though pandemic is in the rearview mirror for the most of the world, don't you know that old Hellraiser is still in court? And I must reckon you have to have some advantage, even without a high-paid lawyer, if you just happen to be, shall we say, blessed, most providentially, with your very own law. And ignorance of the law, they say, is no excuse. Pandemic caught most folks apparently with their britches down. Well, that preacher's kid just happened to have been a biological warfare planner. And when most folks were still learning a new vocabulary and evolving science, he had already brought the first and longest cases against the lockdowns, the masking mandates, and the vaccines. He docketed a dozen cases for certiorari at the Supreme Court, and he even got the CDC to admit, not just on paper, but as an ironclad law, that the coronavirus could not have spilled over into a pandemic, but had to come by definition from a lab. He wrote that law, but it must have been some top secret cover-up because it never appeared in the press. He may have been born a preacher's kid, who had understood as a preacher's kid, but when he grew up to be a man, he landed himself a job as the Army's top spy. And because he had helped to write that law too, on what can be classified and how, his FOIA request didn't make any headlines in the press. In fact, a sworn declaration from the Deputy General Counsel at the White House says his request for just one simple document had required 9 months of planning, coordination with the National Security Council, and 2 years of searching just to determine if something was classified at all. And you should know, that dog don't hunt. Now, you know, these days, prosecutors are leaving to a precedent, but when a novel virus had killed a Pentecostal bishop in Chesterfield before the first Eastern pandemic, don't you know that old wise guy from Jersey raced all the way down from Arlington to do what not even that bishop's church would do? And when the court got his case, they sent out a distress signal to the state Supreme Court to designate a retired judge after every other judge in Chesterfield had decided to recuse themselves from that hot potato case. And that prosecutor decided to lawyer up, let the right to remain silent, to retain the best attorney she could to run from him. That old preacher's kid may be forbidden to join the Peace Corps by law, but when he decided to sue the prosecutor in Alexandria, 3 police chiefs quit, along with 2 city attorneys and the court clerk, and 1 judge decided to retire from the bench. Even the pastor whose infection he had wanted to be investigated by a grand jury suddenly announced his plans to retire and leave town, along with the head of church security. Could all be just a coincidence, but did you notice you probably never heard anything at all about it? Well, the case he brought against the largest megachurch in Alexandria over the vaccine mandate. Does that seem just a little bit odd? High-profile cases, and not a word about it. Not even in mockery. And now he's chasing prosecutors simultaneously in Norfolk, Richmond, and Arlington, while at the same time running for school board. And those prosecutors are lawyering up, electing a right to remain silent, and believe it or not, are running from him. He's not even an attorney. He hasn't graduated from law school. He has no degree or license. But I reckon it helps when you bring not just your own facts, but your own law to court. Pandemic. He just happened to write that law. This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.